Welcome to Feminist Question Time, brought to you by Women's Human Rights Campaign, the leading global organisation defending women's sex-based rights against the threats posed by gender identity ideology. There's more information on the website womensdeclaration.com, where you will find our Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights, which has been signed by 19,852 people from 142 countries and is supported by 373 organisations. As well as signatories, we have activists. We currently have country contacts in 50 countries engaged in defending women's rights. If you'd like to get involved, there's a form on the website and you can do that. So I'm really pleased this week we're going to be focusing on Italy. We have Cristina Gramellini from Italy. Then we have Lucia Giansiracusa from Italy. Then we're going to hear from Roberto Trucco from Italy. We're now going to hear from Lucia Giansiracusa from Italy. She's an ArciLesbica activist and one of the Italian country contacts for Italy. She's going to present the book, We the Lesbians, Female Preference and Criticism of Transfeminism. In particular, Lucia will focus on the concept of false rights, which is one of the many topics covered in the book. So welcome, Lucia, welcome back.
This is a book, it's a not big book, and it's titled We the Lesbian, Female Preference and Criticism of Transfeminism. It was published very recently in April of this year. I am one of the 5 authors. Cristina, who has just spoken, is another one. We all belong to ArciLesbica and we are all radical lesbians. The book is in Italian. We would be happy to have it translated in other languages if someone is willing to do it. In the book, we outline the debate on gender theory in Italy and the importance of lesbian politics. In Italy, women's struggle have achieved a lot. Legislative equality and opening up of previously unknown options. But we are still far from the equality in opportunity and full freedom we aspire to. Our achievement frightened men and even some women. When it comes to maintaining their privileges, men stop at nothing. In our society, there is no taboo on violence against women. On the contrary, there is an increased violence against women, which is taking new forms. For instance, the womb for rent, that is an appropriation of the inside of the women's body, or gender identity, which allow the occupation of women identity and spaces. Transfeminism authorizes a misogynistic attack in a rainbow sauce. In the book, we touch upon various topics. We examine the situation of the LGBT movement in Italy, assess the glamour surrounding trans, whereas lesbianism tends to be seen as an old-fashioned option, explain the basic of gender war and give some personal account on why being a lesbian is important to us. Here, I would like to spend a few words on what in the book we are called false rights, a concept to which we arrived after a few years of debate. ArciLesbica is now 25-year-old. Founded in 1996, it has embraced the struggle for homosexual rights while holding on to a legacy of separatism and feminism. Although in alliance with gay groups in order to obtain equal marriage, it has always been a women association run by women. This first period of our history ended with the approval of the civil partnership law in 2016, although even before that, a fault line was beginning to emerge. Starting from surrogacy, we have identified the thread linking the womb for rent, sex work, hormones to minors, the ideology of gender identity, male violence against women, institutional violence against women, and during the COVID period, the expulsion of female labor from the market. They are all part of the current war on women. Discussing and opposing surrogacy, we started to shape the idea of false rights. By false rights, we mean desires of single individuals used by the market to expand its profits. We all know that rights are not a single package given once and for all. Rights have a history and are not always the same in every time and in every society. All rights are the result of intellectual work that conceive them and of social struggles that conquer them, little by little, and with no guarantee that they are secured forever. The history of rights started with the most basic right of the person and then moved on to political rights and social and community rights. But the new rights listed in the Pride manifestos are, in our opinion, false rights. Talking about false rights is not a quick and simplistic way of dismissing demands that we do not like. It is a critique that highlights the contradictory and acceptable form of these demands, pointing out that, in fact, they are not rights at all. False rights are, de facto, individual desires couched in the language of rights, without being right, and get their satisfaction in the market offers. A very clear example is that of womb for rent. People want to be parents and talk about the right to have children, which does not exist. Rather, there is a right of babies not to be torn from their mothers and to be cared for. For adults, there is the potentiality to be parents, but not the right to have a baby. Babies are not simply a thing to be owned or sold or bought. Another example. We all have the potential for loving relationship, but not the right to be provided with a lover just because we pine for one. Whenever there is a right, someone or something, generally the state, has duties. As it happens, for instance, with the right to education. In this case, the state has to provide schools, teachers, scholarship for the right to become practicable. But in the case of parenthood, there should be women to provide children. Thus, women would be used as means of production, or in a more general sense, as a means to other people's ends. In the case of false rights, the fulfillment is to be found in the market, and the state simply has to make it possible with specific legislation. So the very formal structure of false rights is far from that of real rights. The LGBT movement, the transfeminist movement, are full of requests of false rights. In Italy, the claims seeped into the Pride platform immediately after the approval of civil partnership in 2016, as if they were the next generation type of rights. In this way, human bodies, first and foremost, women's body, become the raw material of the market, of a market which is no longer satisfied with our labor. So we oppose a widening of the exploitation that is produced by the womb for rent and prostitution, which are actually structurally and symbolically similar. Women liberation is not to be found by following the path of the body's mind and I sell it as I please. Yet, it is precisely this individualistic stance that transfeminism and queer ideology peddle to new generation of activists. Transfeminism is an apparently transgressive theory, but it fosters a culture and material appropriation of women. It also denies that experiences such as motherhood, lesbianism, and the women movement are strictly female. Transfeminism considers consumer choice as agency, without taking into consideration the structural context in which choices are made. It is an extreme formalism. Any action that does not take place under an obvious physical threat is considered to be free. So harrowing choices like prostitution are seen as free and women who make them as emancipated, especially if those choices are those traditionally considered unseemly. Transfeminists consider them transgressive. But what is less subversive than a woman being prostituted and men buying the right to rape her? Trans activists look at prostitution through men's eye and do not see that prostitution is rape paid for. We maintain that there are two diverging worldviews, the feminist one and the individualistic and queer one. A clear example is the opposing definition of the concept of gender and gender identity. So we hope to have numerous presentations of our book. This is because for us, this book is a political tool, a way to clarify complex and contentious topics. We are willing to debate with anyone because we know our reasons are strong. Unfortunately, our adversaries tend to shrink from public debate, and their preferred tactics is to silence women. So, while invitation are refused, intimidation and insults fill social networks. Just a small example of what is happening. We have given a complimentary book to the LGBT bookshop in Milan, which a young man who owns it decided to call it Antigone, but he told us, even before reading it, that they would not keep it in the shop, simply because it was written by ArciLesbica activists. And I would like to say something on the title. We decided to title the book We the Lesbians, because other homosexual women do not use this word any longer. They think it's too old and not inclusive enough. We happily use this word for ourselves as a political statement, and this gives us a constituent power, that of declaring ourselves and being the lesbian subject which others fear to or dismiss. We are certain that the strength of this affirmation will be attractive for many other lesbians. This is a foothold we can use to live our lives and possibly change the world. We are female by birth. We are women who do not accept the normative genders of patriarchal culture. Our rebellion against genders and their norms does not prevent us from loving our bodies and those of our women. It does not push us to change the body, but to change society and culture. Luckily, there is a growing number of voices raised locally and internationally to defend women and lesbians, despite the attack of gender activists. And this book tried to be one of these voices. Thank you.
The idea of false rights, is this an idea that has a historical basis that comes from other books and other ideas? I haven't really heard about it. So where did you get the idea from, and does it fit in with other bits of theory?
Well, I think it's a bit the product of our discussion. We have been discussing this problem. As you see, all the problem interconnects. So we have started in 2016, I think, more or less, with the debate on surrogacy. And it was a very strong debate, very deep and even violent in some way within our association, because ArciLesbica basically in that period sort of split into two on the issue of surrogacy. And so we had to start thinking of what it was happening, why people that work with us for years and years, even some of our friends in the association, started to think in a way that for us was almost incomprehensible. So really the difference started then in Italy for us, started on surrogacy. But I think really all the other topics, the type of reasoning is the same. It's a neoliberalist approach, individualistic, queer, whatever you want to call it, or a more feminist and radical approach. We saw that basically this worked for everyone. Personally, there was a book that was very important to sort of click some of the things for me, but it doesn't talk about false right as such. That I think is our product. Was Freedom Fallacy, was called Freedom Fallacy, and is an anthology, and with the different which analyze different topics. And I thought that was the idea of fallacy that was translated in falso in Italian, therefore false rights. So in a way that was helpful.
Lucia, do you have, is this that your organization, ArciLesbica, has been meeting in person for the last 20 years? Are you an organization that's carried on meeting and thinking, and how does that happen?
Yeah,
because
we have a real organization, not a digital organization. We've been, well, some of us, I, for instance, worked in a lesbian movement for over 40 years. I don't care even to think how long. And then I met, for instance, Christina, even before we founded ArciLesbica. And then in 1996, ArciLesbica was founded, and we always meet in person because it is a national organization. Therefore, we meet in each town where there is what we call a circle, or a group in the town where the women decided, lesbian decided to congregate. And then we had national meetings, and we have a national group, like a steering committee that speak for the whole association. Although each town has got the freedom to organize whatever they want within a framework. And this framework is given by a written document, which is approved every 3 years in a congress, so what we call a general assembly. And so it was in the preparation of the written document of our Congress in 2017 that we started to put this idea together. Then, since then, obviously, we always met and discussed this topic. We read books together. Well, I suppose our idea of fun is meeting on Sunday afternoon and discuss. So, okay.
So now we're going to hear from Roberta Trucco. Roberta Trucco is a feminist. She graduated in literature and philosophy. She published a novel, My Name is MAry Magdalene, Marlin editore, in 2019. She's published several articles on Corriere della Sera blog, 27 Ora, the 27th hour, I suppose, but we'll put that in as well. She's a passionate reader of child psychoanalysis texts, and she did aquarels, which I guess are watercolors, for the album book You Say Vulva, Handle with Care.
Why am I here? Probably because I wrote a novel, My Name is MAry Magdalene, published by Marlin editore in 2019, in which I face the complex issue of surrogacy. I ran into surrogacy many years ago, and this topic had a very strong impact on me. It was a physical sensation that really hit me in my womb when first I heard about it. I felt a scream coming up from my belly, saying that this practice was unacceptable. And it seems to me that it was so clear how unacceptable it was, and I wondered why people couldn't see it. However, I realized in a short time that it was like that. people seem to be convinced by the narration that it is an act of love, the most beautiful act of love, to give birth to babies for other couples who can't have babies on their own. This narration was accepted without any profound reflections on baby trauma. No one tried to put him or herself in the position of the baby. No one was used to give words to the life that was coming out. And I was impressed that no one was worrying by the fact that we are all born from a woman, not simply from a female body. We know in an ancestral way how important is that living body. We are our body. Not only by scientific literature, but instinctively, we know how important is also the feelings of the mother and the environment that surrounds the mother during the growth of the fetus. So I was impressed by the fact that people didn't even think to the enormous trauma imposed to babies that were taken out from a woman body to be given to another woman or man completely unknown by him or her. And I was impressed by the enormous trauma imposed to a woman to be separated from her creature. So I started writing many articles because this issue impacts on many different fields: the health of women, the health of babies, juridical, economical, philosophical, and ethical fields. This helped me to deepen a really complex topic, but not to open the debate to more and more people. I was convinced that we all have to discuss about this practice because this is the root of the great social change we are living. We are at an epochal crossroads. The answer we will give to this will mark the very sense of being human. So I began to think that it was important to reach the heart of the young generation, and the best way to achieve it was to write a novel. First of all, I am a mother, and I wanted to reach the heart of my daughter and son without ethical issue or moral issue, but through recalling an ancestral language that belongs to everyone since ever. The knowledge and the awareness of the importance to give birth through women's body, the entire physical and emotional body, is still alive. But for how long? If we separate motherhood definitely into many separate processes, what will happen of the unconscious knowledge that has passed through women's body for millennia? I wanted to create a reaction based on this question. If we start to think to gestation as an industry process in which the only important thing is the final product, a product that has to be exactly with the characteristic we wish it to have, what happened to the idea we have of human being? In my novel, the main character, MAry Magdalene, I choose this name not at random, but I have no time to explain why I choose it, is a young girl who grew up in Los Angeles, where commercial surrogacy is legalized. She has a dream come up from unconscious world. She wants to go to the Amazonia forest. She wants it so much that when she discovered that she is excluded from the scholarship that would allow her to go, she recklessly decides to become a surrogate mother to achieve in few months the amount of money that will allow her to make the journey anyway. She's a young woman, intelligent, cultured, who lives in the so-called first country. However, she makes a decision in a very superficial way, also because slogans and narrative that drives women to do this are very effective in our Western cultures. The ability to link a narrative of love with the possibility of earning a lot of money in just 9 months is very attractive. It's a narrative I thought my daughters might catch up with. But during MAry Magdalene's pregnancy, the inner truth, the ancestral language I spoke of, slowly comes to light and will lead her to make some important and courageous choices. The first revelation of it will happen again through a dream. When, following in vitro fertilization, she becomes pregnant with twins, the client parents ask her to abort one as required by the contract. In the meantime, the university calls her back. She can participate to the project. This is the moment when MAry Magdalene decides to leave to escape abortion. One of the client parents is displaced by the girl's determination, falls into a deep crisis, and decides to follow her to Amazonia forest. They will be joined by a nurse and a young anthropologist, and together they will reach a mission of nuns in northern Brazil. Immersed in the ancestral rhythm of the indigenous people, they will find the answer they look for. The main character journey is a parallel journey, inside and outside, where the outside and the inside are not separated. The characters, each one in his own way, will find that the ancestral knowledge of the so-called primitive peoples can save us. There is no technology that can teach us to live. We are the best technology ever. This is the achievement they receive from indigenous wisdom. Of course, the deep bond that exists between motherhood and the earth nature unfolds through events and in the end becomes evident. The inspiration to send my protagonist to Amazonia forest, where Iguanas people live, comes from a book I read, written by Jen Ledloff, entitled The Continuum Concept, written in the 70s of the past century. This same book accidentally appears in the protagonist's hands during the development of the plot. Jen Ledloff, in her book, elaborates the concept of the continuum. I quote some of her words. We are destroying our future. It is the breaking of the initial balance, the violent separation between mother-child since the first instance of life, and then repeated more and more to produce uprooted, anxious, insatiable, dependent, aggressive individuals in our world that we proudly call the first. The Western civilization, accelerating, deprecating, and above all, devastating the childhood from birth, has interrupted the natural evolutionary process, entering in a self-destructive spiral. She observes that endogestation and exogestation is a biological necessity, closely connected with the mental balance of the individual and with the integrity of the human group to which one belongs. To all the women that has listened to me today, I want to say, you are trees of a great forest. In you flows the ancestral life that comes up from the roots and pushes the branches upwards and gives the shape to the foliage and to the always different landscape. Without each of these trees, the planet dies. I was surprised by the fact that many words that we usually use, like freedom and love. The words that we use for the community were completely destroyed, or for me was assuming a meaning, and for others completely different. And this is the time we are living also in. So I wanted to find the way to reach the belly. I say the belly because I'm sure that women know what the importance of the knowledge that inside our body, all women, no means if they are children or not, we are born from that body, that person, and we know it. Also men knows it because they come from that. So but the only way was really to try to write a novel just to reach that belly, just because we have to go to another language, because now the words we use for someone represent the same meaning, for others completely different. In my group, we had a very strong conflict, very strong, when we were talking about this issue. No one wanted to treat the issue of surrogacy because they know that it was going to fight. And it happened, still now. So I thought it was important to try to do this.
Cristina Gramellini, she's a history and philosophy teacher in a secondary school. She's a lesbian activist since 1990 and currently national president of ArciLesbica, the association that this year organized a conference in Milan on the inviolable rights of women entitled Different, Not Exclusionary, with 15 speakers. Cristina is going to talk to us about changes in the law against homotransphobia under discussion in Italy and violence and threats to the critics.
Grazie e buonasera a tutte. Il mio si intitola Una legge contro l'omofobia in Italia? Il movimento LGBT in Italia ha chiesto per molto tempo una legge contro l'omofobia, prevedendo di ottenerla prima della legge che riconosce le coppie dello stesso sesso. Ma così non è stato. Nel 2016 il Parlamento italiano ha approvato una legge sulle unioni civili, senza avere mai previsto il reato di discorsi e atti di odio per motivi omofobici. L'Italia, d'altro canto, ha provveduto già nel lontano 1982 a regolare con una legge il cambio di sesso. Dopo le unioni civili, a mio avviso, si può considerare istituzionalmente raggiunto il rispetto per la scelta omosessuale. Tuttavia, il movimento LGBT sembra trovarsi a suo agio solo con il discorso antidiscriminatorio e con la rivendicazione di leggi. Per questo motivo, un deputato gay del Partito Democratico, Alessandro Zan, ha redatto un disegno di legge contro l'omotransfobia che nel 2020 ha ottenuto il voto favorevole di una delle due Camere del Parlamento italiano. In quel momento la maggioranza politica era di centrosinistra. Nella proposta di legge Zan c'è qualcosa di diverso rispetto ai temi, ai testi sull'argomento arenati in Parlamento negli ultimi 3 decenni. Qui non si parla più di transessualità, ma di identità di genere, definita come, aperte virgolette, l'identificazione percepita e manifestata di sé in relazione al genere, anche se non corrispondente al sesso, indipendentemente dall'aver concluso un percorso di transizione. Questa dicitura ha giustamente allarmato le femministe non queer, che vi hanno visto un'apertura alla autocertificazione di cambio anagrafico di sesso. che è un obiettivo del movimento trans internazionale e anche italiano, e chiede che sia sufficiente una dichiarazione solenne davanti a un ufficiale pubblico per un cambio legale di sesso. Da un po' di tempo a questa parte, la dissidenza rispetto a qualsiasi rivendicazione proveniente dal movimento LGBT causa reazioni scomposte di questo contro le femministe, anche lesbiche, accusate di transfobia, disumanità, produzione di fake news e altro, eccetera. Come sull'utero in affitto, anche sul tema della self-ID, dell'autocertificazione di genere, si assiste ad un attacco contro il pluralismo nel dibattito. Concretamente, un nuovo soggetto neutro sta cercando di sostituirsi alle donne come protagonista del femminismo. Esso è fatto di trans, queer e anche uomini e donne autodefiniti ribelli sessuali, senza troppa fatica a quanto pare, che bollano chi si oppone con gli epiteti di TERF, cisgender, femonazionalista, suprematista e simili. Il clima è deteriorato, come in altri paesi, e le più timide vorrebbero sottrarsi a quella che sembra più una guerra che una discussione. Ma aumenta il malessere di fronte ad atti di prevaricazione ormai anche fisica. Ad esempio, ai Pride di Firenze e di Bologna di quest'anno, 2021, ci sono stati allontanamenti forzati di femministe che portavano cartelli contro il sistema prostituente e si è verificata la distruzione del banchetto di un'associazione mista che si chiama La Comune, che critica la self-ID nell'ambito di un discorso comunque solidale con le persone trans. E anche noi di ArciLesbica siamo state colpite con una scritta arcistronze firmata Rabbia Trans sul muro della nostra sede a Bologna. Perché non ci va bene la self-ID? Soprattutto perché con essa avremmo persone di sesso maschile autodefinite donne negli spazi femminili, negli sport, nelle case rifugio, nelle quote destinate a riequilibrare la rappresentanza, ma anche perché non vogliamo che la donna venga ridotta ai suoi stereotipi. Tacchi, parrucche, belletti, favolosità. Molte lesbiche hanno rifiutato gli stereotipi della femminilità e lo hanno fatto anche molte femministe eterosessuali. Le donne trans invece li rivendicano, tanto che a loro si addice il termine cisgender molto più che a noi. Raccogliere un immaginario deposto dal femminismo è qualcosa che abbiamo lasciato fare senza alcuna gelosia, ma ora siamo davanti a una ridefinizione trans di ciò che è la donna. Questa risignificazione ci appare regressiva e non possiamo lasciare fare. Ottenere un ascolto dialettico da Alessandro Zan non è stato possibile, giacché egli aveva dalla sua parte le donne autodefinite trans includenti, la maggioranza parlamentare e il movimento LGBT. Le donne politiche di centrosinistra hanno fatto a gara a confermare le richieste delle piazze dei Pride, puntando al loro bacino di elettori, perché è un bacino considerevole. Infine, la proposta Zan contava di convincere tutti gli incerti con un asso nella manica. Il testo menziona anche disabilità e misoginia tra i crimini di odio che si incarica di contrastare. Benché non c'entri nulla con l'omotransfobia, chi oserà opporsi alla difesa dei disabili? La proposta di legge Zan, come si intuisce da questi elementi, è scritta male, pensata male, portata avanti con la sicumera di chi sente di avere i numeri. Ciò ha fatto moltiplicare le proteste e le critiche di area progressista. Giuristi democratici, intellettuali, giornaliste, che chiedono emendamenti e sono trattati alla stregua di omotransfobici sfrenati. A ciò si aggiunge che all'inizio del 2021 la maggioranza di centrosinistra è caduta e ha lasciato posto a un governo di unità nazionale, una specie di grande coalizione anti-Covid. Sicché, al momento di votare definitivamente al Senato la proposta Zan, non ci sono più i numeri né in Parlamento né consenso sociale intorno al testo. La tracotanza dei fautori della proposta Zan, però, non vuole sentire parlare di emendamenti e ha prodotto un imbarazzante stallo. La legge si è arenata ancora. Tornerà forse in discussione questo autunno, forse mai. Resta un clima velenoso di odio per le donne indisponibili a cedere il nome di donne, le pari opportunità e l'utero, e prosegue la promozione delle donne invece amiche degli aspiranti padri gay con la GPA e degli aspiranti donne con il pene. La lotta continua. Grazie.
What is the position of the Catholic Church and or the Pope on transgender ideology? Have they said anything or are they keeping quiet for the moment?
Inizialmente la Chiesa non ha esternato, poi però poco prima dell'estate c'è stata una presa di posizione molto dura, nel senso che i portavoce hanno minacciato di impugnare il concordato. Tra l'Italia e la Chiesa Cattolica c'è un concordato, una cosa che può essere paragonata a un trattato tra due stati, che conferisce dei privilegi alla Chiesa Cattolica che peraltro noi donne progressiste abbiamo sempre criticato. Non è che io li nomini per dire che sono buoni, tutt'altro. Però la Chiesa ha dei privilegi, la Chiesa Cattolica ha dei privilegi in Italia, regolati dal concordato. Allora la Chiesa Cattolica ha minacciato lo Stato italiano di invocare il concordato perché la legge Zan prevede la celebrazione in tutte le scuole della giornata contro l'omotransfobia. Allora la Chiesa Cattolica dice: nelle scuole cattoliche io ho il diritto di educare secondo i miei criteri circa che cos'è la persona. Allora, poiché la legge Zan dà una definizione di identità di genere, che ho detto prima, di genere, se la legge viene approvata così com'è, la celebrazione della giornata contro l'omotransfobia diventa un obbligo per tutte le scuole, pubbliche e private. Allora, la Chiesa di Roma ha detto questo è contro il concordato. Questo pronunciamento è stato traumatico, molto forte. Neanche sulle unioni civili la Chiesa Cattolica aveva scomodato il concordato. Sulle unioni civili aveva detto non sono il matrimonio, non vanno bene, ma non aveva invocato il concordato. Questa volta sì, perché ritiene che lo Stato, se facesse la legge, interferirebbe con le scuole cattoliche. Dopo questo pronunciamento, c'è stata sorpresa tra i proponenti. Tuttavia, il leader del Partito Democratico, benché sia un cattolico, dopo un iniziale sorpresa e sbandamento, ha riaffermato di voler approvare la legge così com'è. E anche il presidente del Consiglio italiano, Mario Draghi, ha detto: l'Italia è un paese laico, e io sono d'accordo, sia chiaro, l'Italia è un paese laico, quindi non dobbiamo tener conto di queste interferenze. Quindi, per rispondere in breve alla domanda, la Chiesa Cattolica ha chiesto un un alt al DDL Zan per modificarlo. Si è trattato però di un pronunciamento di lato conservatore. Noi, cioè io, l'associazione ArciLesbica, noi guardiamo alle obiezioni di parte progressista. Però certo la Chiesa Cattolica ha detto che non vuole la legge Zan così com'è.